Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to District 17 Conference Marawa 2025 Inspired. I'm your host for this episode, Keonie Upton, where my mission is to empower growth through real conversations. I'll be sitting down with some of the best public speakers in Perth, Western Australia, and I'm joined by the 2022 World Championship speaker. I'll be sitting down interviewing them individually on what characteristics make an amazing speech.
Welcome to District 17 Annual Conference 2025. My name is Diana Go, and together with Keonie Upton, we're bringing the best in public speaking to you. At Toastmasters, we train people on communication and leadership skills. Welcome, and let's get on to it.
Cyril Junior Dim, welcome to District 17 Conference and welcome to Perth, Western Australia.
Thank you very much for having me. Super excited to be here. My first time in Australia. I'm very happy I landed in Perth first. Such an experience, man, I have to tell you. Yeah.
How have you found the experience in Perth so far?
It's been amazing. It's been amazing. Of course, the hospitality has been just above and beyond, but also seeing around and looking forward to seeing around, you know. I know so much about Australia only from TV or from reading. To actually experience it in the flesh is a privilege. Really happy to be here.
I'm happy to hear that, man. With the typical Australian vibe, were you expecting like kangaroos to be hopping around everywhere?
You know what? Yeah, I was like, where are the kangaroos at the airport? Come on now. I have very close friends from Australia. They're a very bad influence in all the best ways, you know. The first time I learned to swim was with my buddy out in the harbour in Sweden, Australian dude who just pushes me over and says, figure it out. Such a joy. I've always felt a bit of a connection to Australia through those people. To be here now, again, I feel it's like an honour to them.
Awesome. Yeah. With your public speaking journey and everything you've learnt and adapted to so far, with coming to Australia, do you find that there's a big difference in the way we communicate here compared to back in your hometown?
Well, I find that the only difference is our confidence with the language. Now, you know, I've got three frames of reference in this discussion. I've got Zimbabwe, where I grew up. I've got Poland, where I live right now. And of course, I've got Australia. Now, in Zimbabwe, we speak English. It's the official language there. So you find people have a measure of confidence. You put them on stage. They don't have the same concerns that, say, a person in Poland has, where it's a second language. In Poland, I found, and really in many parts of Europe, I've found this spirit of, I wish you knew how smart I am in my native language. And because of that, you can see kind of a mental block when they speak. You come to Australia where that isn't a worry and you see more room for creativity, more room to play around with figures of speech, with the language, and therefore the speakers appear more free when they're on stage. But it really boils down to this fear of not knowing how to use the language because it's not your first language. That's the only difference I could say I've picked out.
Did you find that adjustment with obviously language barriers and conveying your point to, even though English is a very universal language, do you find that your home or English in Poland is completely different to English in Australia? And
certainly.
Wow.
You know, I resonate with that question so deeply because it was one of the first lessons I had to learn. You see, I came from a literature background where we read even Victorian English. You're reading Charles Dickens and you don't need a guide. You understand exactly what it's saying, Shakespearean English. And you get to Poland and you're speaking a certain brand of polished textbook English, and they're like, what are you saying? You know, speak to us.
Yeah.
And I was taken to the wisdom of Einstein, who said, if you can't explain it simply without making it simpler, then you don't understand it enough.
Exactly.
And it was an exercise in simplifying the way I say it so that my message would be globally, universally accessible. I'm very thankful for the experience. I found it was a really hard training, but very necessary to shape me into the speaker I am today.
I love that.
Yeah.
Giving a speech in front of a big audience, 2022 World Championships. I want you to envision that moment again.
Oh, wow, man.
The crowd, the pressure.
I get goosebumps just thinking about it, you know. The first time I got invited to the World Semis, that's 2020, but you see, that's during the pandemic. So it's all happening online. And I remember feeling this sense of disappointment. You know, it's bittersweet. I get to be there, but I don't get to be there. And it's exactly because of what you've asked.
Yeah.
The mental picture I had of the moment, if and when the moment would come. So taking you to 2022, the finals, I remember the first memory I have is backstage they've mic'd me up, I'm looking into the mirror, I've got a bottle of water, and they won't talk to you anymore because they know there's nothing more they can do for you. They don't want to disturb you, they get out of your hair. And I've tried to block out the noise from the other contestants because I don't want that to influence how I show up on stage.
100%.
So I'm trying to listen for the applause, just the applause, because that tells me I'm about to go out next. And of course, the applause comes. I see the speaker before me. They come backstage, and I know this is it. And there's this silence for the judges. And Morag, very distinct Scottish accent, I can remember her saying, "Cyril, Junior, Dim, and Dini." And I'm like, this is it, we're going to do it. And I step out on stage, and I kid you not, it's an ocean of people in front of me. But thankfully, the stage lights are almost blinding. So you don't get to really see everyone, so it's not as scary as it could be if you could really see. This is a full room.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the frames of Mike Carr's glasses, and he and I were talking just before we go on stage. He's got these perfect pearly whites, and he's sitting close to the front. And I remember taking a moment to just take all of it in and think, my goodness, how we got here. I think back to that young kid in Zimbabwe saying, my favorite food is, in kindergarten, and learning how to speak in front of people, to standing in front of an audience of nearly 1,000 in Nashville.
Wow. I want to talk about that exact moment.
Yeah.
Pressure's high, blood pressure's high, your heart rate's pounding, 150 beats a minute. How do you go about the process of giving a speech and staying calm when you've so much external pressures on yourself?
That's an important question. It's a really good question as well. I can think of two versions of Cyril. The first version would have handled that much worse, because that first version was focused on the trophy. I was in the contest. Now, the problem is, if you're in the contest, you're susceptible to the contest. It's the most important thing to you. You want to appease the contest. A much smaller margin of error, you make more mistakes there. I feel like I was there for something much bigger than trophies or the contest. I feel like I got to a point where, especially in this journey of identity and self-acceptance, I had made such progress that I wanted the message to catch on. And I imagine there were so many in the audience who perhaps for one reason or the other had had the exact same fight, the exact same questions of who am I? Where am I in this cosmic mess we find ourselves in? And so thinking to the importance of that message, it drove me in ways I've never been driven before. And when I think back to the experience, I almost don't recognize myself because I'm like, who was that? A small secret I can tell you about that experience to really help you get a picture of just how out of it I was, if you want to call it that. A third of that speech is improvised. We went off script entirely in the moment because I was backstage asking myself questions of, is this really how I want to express this? Or could this be a bit clearer? Could this be a bit more relatable, a bit more universal? And I realized a part of the story was strictly Toastmasters. I wanted this speech to be accessible to the world. And so I go on stage with this pump of the message, it's bigger than me, it's bigger than the trophy. I get to the point, I say, I don't care what happens now if I go over time or not. I start freestyling it. And I remember my team from Poland, they're sitting somewhere off to my right. They jump. They're like, wait, no, that's not the script. And I remember one of them pulls out the phone because like, we need to time him. What if he shoots over time? Such was the panic. But I was in the place. I was in the zone because the message mattered to me so much. And I believe that's the secret sauce. You want to do well. You really have to care about what it is you're speaking about. That conviction, it shows. And it'll carry you to stages in ways you've never been carried before.
Cyril, congratulations, man. That is super inspiring. I want to talk about your Toastmasters journey and your development through that. With starting Toastmasters very young, at age...
So I've known about Toastmasters since I was 13.
13, wow.
Became a member when I was 20. Forgive me, I was working on African time. We're late for everything. So yeah, thereabouts.
How has Toastmasters shaped the way you speak
Good question. Good question. So I had this very performative approach to public speaking prior to Toastmasters. I believe that the presentation could carry you through even the worst speeches, and maybe to a certain extent that's true. Toastmasters introduced me to the concept of depth, because now you're speaking to the real world, to people with real problems. And honestly, if we want the entertainment value, we'll pay for a ticket and go somewhere, watch a comedian. We need you to say something that actually matters. What I like about Toastmasters is the system of mentorship. Mentorship is very different from coaching. I had a coach and a mentor. Coaching is very specific to the speech you're about to give, but mentorship is almost life coaching. It's helping you to grow into the kind of speaker you want to be. And so my greatest support in Toastmasters was this system of mentorship. Through this system, I was able to identify what was holding me back in terms of development. This need to be the best, this need to dominate. It was through the Toastmasters mentorship system that I found someone who pointed it out and said, Cyril, if you can overcome this, you're going to be a better speaker than you've ever been before. In Toastmasters, I was able to build a network, and this is invaluable. You know what they say, you want to go far, take people with you. And so I can boil down the value of Toastmasters to the support I found. It was really a sandbox where I could express myself, learn myself, and carve myself into that speaker I wanted to be.
That's truly amazing. Toastmasters, you started this very young. How did you find the journey of starting Toastmasters? And for someone starting Toastmasters today, what is one piece of advice and guidance you would give them with the knowledge and wisdom you have now?
Right, thank you for that. An important one as well. The small steps matter.
What do you mean by that?
That means preparation is preparation. There is no winging it. Rehearsal is rehearsal. You might look at the big names, the talented speakers, and you don't boil them down to these simple basics of time to script is time to script. Consistency, habits, learning these habits. If you've got the basics done right, we have a pathways system right now in Toastmasters. What are the basics? Going through those materials, actually putting in the work. Now, Dorothy is a bit of a mentor as well from Zimbabwe. She says, the speech is the very last part. You really want to benefit, you need to be knee deep in the meat of it all, which is the pathways material, the course material, the educational bit. And if you're diligent about those parts, the small parts that seem insignificant or a bit of a bore, that's where you really polish those fundamentals. And those fundamentals are essentially what we are doing as professionals. It's just we've been doing them for a while. If I were to find a beginner and give them any advice, it would be to take care of those basics. Be diligent about, this is my time for scripting. It's my time for rehearsal. I'm going to note down the feedback. I'm going to work on it next time. And I'm going to follow up. Did you see any improvement this time? Those tiny basics will take you so far in your journey.
I feel that. With the Toastmasters journey you've been on, and that process of actively seeking out that feedback, that guidance, that mentorship that Toastmasters offers, do you think what separated you from the rest of the pack is that actively seeking guidance, feedback, criticism?
That's a good one. And I wish I could say the answer was yes, but I wouldn't want to take anything away from those people I stood on stage with back there in Nashville. My goodness, what a talented bunch.
Wow.
Aaron Beverly, my coach, he was very frank about it. He said, there's always going to be an element of luck. And I don't mean this to discount the work. I mean to say what really happened was the meeting of preparation with an opportunity. I had to be prepared at all times so that whenever the opportunity presented itself, I was ready to grab it with both hands. If I were to think a bit harder though, I can think of moments where I did try to, like Kobe Bryant said, to outwork the competition. And my mind immediately goes to a few days before the finals in Nashville, where I went downtown and I would stop individuals having lunch or taking a walk, and I'd say to them, look, I've got a 7-minute speech that could change my life. I want to know what this speech could do to the average person. I don't want money. I don't want anything. I just want to hear what you think. Could you afford me 7 minutes of your time? And that's how I collected feedback. Wow. That was going outside of Toastmasters to collect feedback. And I think back to such moments, and I imagine that to some extent I did try to outdo myself. I said, when this journey is over, I don't ever want to look back and blame myself for the outcome. I want to be able to say, however it ended, I did my absolute best. And certainly I imagine that contributed to the result.
That's amazing, Cyril. Well, welcome to Perth, Western Australia, District 17 Toastmasters Conference. It's been an absolute inspiring seeing you perform in action, and it means the absolute world to us that you've made the time to come here to Perth.
Thank you so much for having me.